Hello, Unbreakable Mompreneurs. My name is Charisse Walker, and I'm your host. And today I'm here with Lola Adeyemo. She actually has a few awards of how accomplished she is. She's an entrepreneur and a mom. And so we are going to talk about both of those things today. So without further ado, Lola, why don't you introduce yourself to our guests?
Hi everyone, thanks Charisse for having me here. My name is Lola Adeyemo and born and raised in Nigeria, now based in the US. I'm based in San Diego, California now. I work primarily with companies to build successful communities. Employee resource group, business resource group is my niche and focus. And then I also have a community for immigrant professionals in corporate America that is under my nonprofit arm.
How did you start your business?
I would say passion. Business found me. I think I was just talking to somebody about this fact that I always saw myself as the corporate girl. Like, I'm going to work in corporate America. I'm going to climb the ladder. Like, I have a sister who is very entrepreneurial, and I'm like, no, I am not entrepreneurial at all. I
Mhm.
have three business entities right now. I'm not sure how it happened. But 2020 was a year, it was a time in history for a lot of us, including me. I was working in corporate America at a good position, big company, Fortune 100 company, right? Like really doing good. But 2020 January is also when I had my third baby.
Mhm.
And then my first two were home. And then I started a doctoral program. And so I was just choked up and I was not happy doing what I was doing. When I decided to quit corporate America, like when I literally put in my notice, it wasn't pre-planned. It was 24 hours. And then I had, people that said, "Oh, are you crazy? It's the middle of a pandemic. You hold on to it." But I did have the privilege, the advantage that my husband had started a business and we got our first contracts that year.
Mhm.
And so he was kind of like, we need to hire people, we need to do this. I didn't have HR background. I'm a scientist by background. And I was like, we'll figure it out. So when I quit, started building that business employee base.
Mhm.
So Sapient Logic is that company that we started together in 2016, got our first contract in 2020. And so I joined as COO to help build out what
Mhm.
does hiring look like? How do we onboard people? What does benefits look like for our employees? We now have about 21 employees full time. So that business has grown. But that business was kind of my job in a way because the real passion work I wanted to do was to support minority employees in corporate America. And I think that's the one that kind of found me
Mhm.
because when I thought I was quitting to go do this other thing at the back end, and then I was getting people reach out to me about employee resource groups, which is really what I love. And I was doing it informally, like building a community for ERGs and advising people. And when I started the business, EQImindset is equity and inclusion. I guess I really didn't see that starting business. It was more, I'm doing what I love. This
Mhm.
feels my call. This is an impact I want to make. This is the kind of thing I want to do. And just taking it one step after the other. Now, my nonprofit, maybe a little more intentional, but also I had no idea what I was doing. I think I started off as a researcher trying to explore the immigrant experience in corporate America. So as I'm doing all this work with companies to build communities for their diverse employees, I didn't see a lot of acknowledgement of the immigrant experience, which was my own lived experience as a Black woman in corporate America. I kept being put in this black box.
Mhm.
And there was just this uncomfortable feeling of a lot of the black box spaces I was being put in. I still didn't feel connected. And so when I started talking to other immigrants, it didn't matter if they were from Africa or Asia or Europe, right? It was similar. It's like because we have this cultural perspective that is causing that conflict. And
Mhm.
so the book interviews kind of emerged into a TED talk about the topic. And then I started a nonprofit we know that as immigrant professionals, feeling included in corporate America might look a little different
Mhm.
because we have a different layer that we can turn to an advantage instead of looking at it as a barrier. And so Immigrants Incorporate was a business that was started as a nonprofit with that social impact focus. So it's a professional development space. I'm, learning the business aspect of it, that even though it's a nonprofit and you're excited about it, it's also a business. So I feel like I'm more matured with one business, kind of evolving in another business. And one, I feel like I have no idea what I'm doing. I'm just starting.
You know what? But you're taking charge and you're doing things, and that's what's important. You're taking the steps, even, and you're learning as you go.
Yes,
And
yes.
keep in mind, you have a business that now have 21 full-time employees that you've grown. And so let's talk about that for just a minute. What are some of the things that you learned growing that business to where you've been able to scale it to where it is now?
So, wow, I think the biggest thing is there was that financial gap for both
Mhm.
of us, right? So my husband is an engineer.
Mhm.
It's a black and white kind of person. I am more of the empathy side. Like I am the feely touchy, like, we gotta give them this, we gotta give them that. He's more of the yes, 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 no, no, no. And then there's funding, right? As an entrepreneur trying to launch a business, what does our account look like?
Mhm.
None of us is a QuickBook expert. Bookkeeping, how do we keep the books? How do we make sure that month over month and taxes? So I felt like we were always chasing and running after, like, our taxes were always late, our books were always behind, and we were always just like trying to play catch up.
Mhm.
But then when we started turning every lesson we learn into a process, right? Like we hired our first employee. Okay, now that we're hiring the next one, what is the template for hiring? Like how do we post? Where do we post the jobs? Who is interviewing? We had some hires that were not good hires and not good fit. And so it started being, don't just find them on Indeed or LinkedIn and take them at their word. I also need to meet them because there's a cultural aspect of the interview. It's not just the skills, because this is the IT space, right? So sometimes we tend to focus more on the certifications and then we forget about the people side
Mhm.
of hiring. So I think we learned about turning every experience we have into a process that is repeatable.
Right.
And so that kind of helped us, especially around financing, also funding, right? We didn't know anything about line of credits, and then we only reached out to our bank and we got denied multiple times. And then somebody had mentioned to us about factoring. We didn't know what that was. We had no idea. Again, there's all this information that we had to learn from experience. There wasn't any place where we had guidance. I mean, we're both immigrants. We're both in an industry where it's very much dominated by older, experienced military
Mhm.
veterans. So as a contractor in that space and a minority, it was just really challenging. So we learned to lean on community, we learned to ask questions, do research, and then once we find the help, document it and then use it again.
I love that. So you said a word that I'm not familiar with. Did you say factoring?
Yeah, factoring is what it's called, which I heard about too. So it's basically if you have a contract with the government
Huh?
and then you have a client, you have an invoice out.
Oh,
The
okay.
government always pays its bills, essentially. Well, hopefully. We're in 2025. Anything is possible. I'm trying not to be negative here, but if you have a contract and an invoice, the payment is late, the payment is different. So, right, the payment cycles is
Mhm.
sort of like your employees are being paid every 2 weeks. You have salaried employees and they're full
Mhm.
time. So they don't care whether your client, your customer has paid you. They want their paycheck every 2 weeks, right? But the fact is, we don't submit client invoice until the month after. So in February, we're submitting invoice for last month, and then sometimes they pay in 30 days, sometimes they pay in 60 days.
Mm.
Now, thinking about that in terms of cash flow, it's like, how do we pay people? And so one of the things with factoring is you get a funding company that would take your invoice as a promise to pay
Okay.
and then they pay you that cash within 24 hours. So essentially, taking you out of the banking system and saying you have an invoice that is trusted and trusted, tested and trusted. They have paid it before. They will pay it. We'll give you the money,
Interesting.
and then we'll take 2% when the money comes in.
Mm.
So that's like it has to be government is very helpful in the government space because they know these invoices and these contracts what they're paid.
Mhm.
So I had to learn that the hard way after we had to scramble sometimes for payroll to to pay everybody.
See, you learn something new every time. So that's why that's a good one.
I'm so glad. I've been telling people about it, and I think a lot of what I try to do is also with learning is share.
Mhm.
Because we don't know what we don't know, and when it comes to entrepreneurship, there's a lot of you figure it out as you go.
Mhm.
So that's why a space like this is really great. Thank you.
No, thank you. Okay, let's switch gears. We're going to talk about momhood. You have 3 children, right?
Yes. My very first baby is 11, and I was telling somebody that I feel like the preteens are starting because I miss my jolly, goofy toddler boy. Because now it's like he's always looking so moody in the morning, and I'm like, "Are you okay? What's going on?" It's like, "I'm good." I said, "I'm good," and I'm like, "Come on, be my goofy boy." So it's middle school for the first time this year, so kind of struggling a little bit. But I have an 11-year-old, and my daughter is 8, and then my youngest just turned 5.
Okay. So they're still pretty young. And so being a mom, 3 businesses, how are you juggling it or balancing it? Which I don't like either of those words.
I know I don't like it out of the words, but I actually think I prefer juggling to balancing because there is no balance.
Yeah.
Because that balance is almost like feeling like you have to have like 5 hands and the feet
Right.
holding everything perfectly. And I really don't think there is. So one of the things that helped me was surviving and thriving in corporate America, interestingly, because I feel like I came out of corporate America in a space where I put in so much hours and work into it that when I stepped out, I had all this time and I had some of these tools that I used. A big part of it is my calendar. A big part of it is a learning delegation,
Mhm.
right? And talk about cultural barriers to some of the beliefs around this thing, right? I grew up with a mom who was home
Mhm.
and then had her own business that she controlled. And so it was a lot of pressure to do everything. At the same time, I know I have the choice to not work, but I want to work, right? So it's a privilege and it's also sort of like a stressor because it's almost like, well, it's my choice to work. So I have to take on everything that comes with it. Like kill yourself in the process of trying to do everything instead of learning to delegate, like making my time count. I think for me is learning about what's really important to me. I use my calendar for everything, right? The dentist appointment for the kids, the doctor's appointment for the if it's not on my calendar, it's not going to happen. So with work, if the kids have plays or if the kids I have to schedule it in. That way I don't put anything over it and then I put driving time, right? Like I know it's not just when the program is starting. I even put things like volunteering, like once in a while, a month, I will try to volunteer in my kids' school when they were in the same school. And I would say I'll serve at lunch duty once a week and I'll put it on my calendar because it's important to me. I don't have to do it, but I want to go spend time with them during the week. And my kids, especially my daughter, they love it when I show up at their school. And so I learned to prioritize what's important to me, plan around it. And the same thing with time with them at home, going to work and having meetings and sometimes traveling a lot. There was a time when I traveled a lot and having evening events. I make sure that if I'm going to have a late evening, if I'm going to be hosting an event, that means I'm going to miss bedtime. So make sure you don't miss the morning. So I show up in the morning, I do the drop off,
Mhm.
I pick them up and make lunch. I make sure dinner. So I go above to accommodate for the later part of the day because it's not just for them, it's also for me.
Yeah.
Because I don't want to deal with that guilt of I'm missing what's important to me right now. So I have to make time for what's important to me. And I also try to be transparent with my kids. I mean, my 11-year-old has always been pretty matured, but a win mom moment for me a couple of weeks ago. I had a busy week where I had something. Usually, I try not to have too many, like not more than 3 max late evening in a week. But I had them back to back.
Mhm.
And my daughter, she just likes to act up sometimes. And so I'm on my way out and she's like, "Where are you going again, mom? Why do you have to go out all the time?" And my son is like, "What do you mean? It's our work. It's part of the work that she does. And she's been home with us all day and she's made dinner for you." And my son just started listing all those things. And I'm like, "Well, I'm raising a man, you know?" And
Sweet.
she's like, it just felt so right to have my son explain to his sister why I had to go because my immediate reaction was guilt.
Mhm.
Immediately she said that. So yeah, I think it's all work in progress.
Yeah. No, and I think that that's the thing is making sure that you do take the time with your children. Like the other day, the kids came home, and I love picking them up from school. I love that time because I get to, hey, how's your day? Da, da, da.
Mhm.
But now they're like, Mom, can we walk home? And I'm thinking, well, it's good exercise for them. It's really nice. And if they want to, because they have friends, they want to walk home with their friends. And so I'm
Mhm.
like, okay, that's fine. But the other day, like I had a window because I always try to not have anything when they come home. So I'm like, okay, sweetie, like go get a game and we'll play it for a little bit before I have to jump on this meeting. And so I think that it's easy to schedule things and be so busy. Um, but and it's easy to neglect your children sometimes. And I think that that's where scheduling time in, like, okay, I need 20 minutes a day with this child, and I need 20 minutes. And then what I found is bedtime. Like my daughter, she's 11 as well, but Mom, can you come lay with us? And I'm like, ah. And she'd always say, can you tell us a story? And I am not like this creative person all the time, right? But once I tell the story, I'm like, wait, I'm pretty good at this. And then the kids just laugh. They have a great time. But what I realized is it's not that they want me to come lay with them. They, like, I have a daughter that her brain never shuts off, ever. And so it's like this hamster wheel that's constantly going. She's thinking of things. And you got through that stage with your son, 11. He's on his way out of this prepubescent stage. But I always say 8 to 10 is so hard because it's their emotional, their brain, like
Right.
hormones are starting to change. And she would cry about everything. And what I realized is if I spent some time with her at night, she could decompress because all the things that were bothering her that day like starts to catch up to her as she's laying there trying to go to sleep. So she can talk to me, and if I'm there, like they open up and they'll tell me stuff that they never would have after school because they're not thinking about it.
Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
I think that for every child, you've got to find that time that works
Yeah.
for them, that they can create this bond and this relationship with you.
Yeah. Yeah. And also it's constantly changing, constantly evolving. I know one of the things my kids play sports, so that's been also been another layer of it.
Yeah.
It's they both they both do basketball and soccer.
Mhm.
And so it's like they come back from school and then there's homework and then there's sports and then my son does KDET and so they have all these activity and I think sometimes so we had said, oh, when you come back from school, do your homework.
Mhm.
And then it became like a stressor for them where it's like we come back from school and they're racing to try and finish their homework. And one of the things we recently did is you don't have to do your homework right after you come back from school.
Yeah.
You can actually come back from school and relax and
Mhm.
take a break. I mean, no electronics during the week,
Mhm.
but do something, relax, eat snack, play with your baby brother, right? Like you, as long as you get your homework done before dinner. And that gave them, I feel like it gave them a little bit more control. It
Yeah.
also took the pressure off for them. And because they're also growing up, is also learning to take responsibility for when I do my homework. I know I have to do it and I know I do, but I don't have to do it right after I get back from school. Yeah.
If you work all day and then you come home and then you work some more, no, you need a break. And same
Yeah.
with kids. I
Yeah.
love that you have rules though, that you talk about no electronics during the week. Like my daughters, they have discovered a game that I want to like throw a shoe at every time. And it's not bad. I think it's like Roblox or something. So
Oh yeah. They all, yep, yep.
yeah, like it's innocent, but I mean, they have become addicted. And every time I turn around, there's a screen in their face. And I'm like, enough. It's hard. Ugh, that,
Yeah.
but they had a friend come over that they've grown up with as a child, and they never stopped running around playing. There was no electronics. And so it's just interesting how some kids, like some of their friends, it's all about screens in their face. Other kids, super creative. And so I
Yeah.
think that's the part is as a mom, my goal right now is what can I do to keep those screens out of their face?
Yeah, and I guess this is part of the every child is different thing too, and where we're also trying to figure out because like my daughter, if you do craft with her, she loves it. Like
Yes.
sit down and make beads, color, paint, watercolor. Like she loves that. My youngest is on the autism spectrum. That's a whole other podcast conversation, like parenting a child, especially a third child on the spectrum. But he just wants to write numbers and letters all day.
Wow.
And he won't have conversations, but he could watch a game and then start playing it. He teaches himself PlayStation 5
Mhm.
and he plays games on it. But my firstborn will sit with a book. he would actually read a novel without prompting. Like,
Wow.
so it's like they enjoy different things. My daughter wants to go, my little one wants to go to the park. My daughter wants to sit down and do craft. My firstborn wants to just stay in his room and read a book that is series that is really good. So it's like, how do I learn not to I want them to spend time together, but at the same time, I don't want time together to kind of be stressful for them. I want them to still have time to do their thing. So that's the challenge. We don't have enough hours in the day.
No, it's true. And I have special needs kids too. They're on the autism spectrum. And it's hard because I have one that it's a full-time job, just making sure he gets ready. Because it's this
Yes.
very long, hour and a half long process. And I'm like, it really should only take you 10 or 15 minutes. It shouldn't take an hour and a half, like really. But he could care less about electronics, but a lot of kids on the spectrum, they hyper focus and become almost addicted to it. And so it's like making
Yeah.
sure that they don't create those.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's
Yeah.
hard. It's hard juggling.
Yeah, I think one of the things that before I had kids, I had somebody actually, no, maybe when I had my first and it was still very little. And I remembered a friend just casually mentioning that they shower for their baby at night.
Mm.
And I was like, oh, that's yucky. So you mean you don't shower for your kid in the morning? When I fell into that routine, I realized this saves me a lot of time and stress in the morning
Yeah.
of actually showering right before bedtime,
Mhm.
getting the kids to shower. And I actually felt like hygiene-wise, it was actually nicer too because they get to get rid of all the stuff from the day and then they sleep better. They slept through the night because they shower and they get right into their pajamas. And in the morning, it's just to brush their teeth, and that saves us so much time from the morning. So it's also learning the things, what does our schedule look like in the morning? What are the things that need to happen? What are the things we can move around? Working from home, morning wasn't really a big stressor for me anymore when I started working. But when I was in corporate America with kids, I had to get on the road before 7 a.m. to avoid traffic and get to work for 8 o'clock meeting.
Right.
And we didn't think there was any other option, right? That's what we did. So get everybody up early and we're racing through the house in the morning, yelling at all the kids and put your breakfast in the car or you're not eating. And and you get to school and you drop them off and then you're running in traffic. And so it's like figuring out we don't have to do this. This is our goal. How do we do it better? What works best for everybody? That's really helpful.
My kids have these beds. They're twin beds, but they stick right next to each other. Because if they could, they wouldn't. My girls have such a tight relationship. They would sleep together, and sometimes they do. But they have these like canopies on top, and I would did all the laundry, and I was putting away, and I'm like, wait a second. Mornings, like you said, are the worst thing because it's I don't want to wear that, and I can't find this, and I can't do that. So I'm like, oh my gosh, I have this genius idea, and it happened 2 days ago. I put on the railing, like on their canopy, I put 5 days worth of clothes, shirts, underwear, pants, like here's day one, here's day two, here's day three. And then they looked at it and they're like, okay, well, no, I don't like that with this. And so they changed everything. So they have their entire week's clothing hanging on their little canopy for the week. And
Yep.
it has been so phenomenal for 2 days. That's all it's been.
Yeah.
But I'm like,
Yeah.
the little things sometimes. And I
The
will say,
little things, yes. And I think that's so this school year has been a little challenging because my three kids are going to three different schools. This is the first time that's ever happened because my first started middle school, then my daughter is going to a different elementary school than my youngest, who is in TK, in a special program in another school. And so it's been like, oh my God, oh my God. And their pickup time is different, all three of them. And so another thing is also switching things around, like who's dropping what, who needs to get up when, who is the first person out of the house. And so how do we prioritize everything so that everybody gets what they want and the downtime they need? Yeah, I feel like it's constantly evolving.
yeah, it is. And it always will. But spending time is great.
Yeah.
Well, if our listeners wanted to get a hold of you, how would they do that?
I'm always on LinkedIn. LinkedIn is my space, but I'm available via email, Lola at EQImindset.com. But I do have the nonprofit platform. It's immigrantsincorporate.com. It's a membership platform, free membership. We have a lot of programs there. But yeah, I would love to chat with people, connect, get coffee, provide some feedback. LinkedIn is the quickest way to get a response from me.
Okay. No, that's great advice. And we didn't touch on it a lot. So I just wanted to like, go back for a minute because we talked about your three companies, but specifically you create culture for companies when it comes to diversity, inclusion, equality, right? The DEI.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Okay. All
Yeah.
right.
I guess community is the word I use. I help companies build intentional communities
Okay.
around inclusion for their diverse employees.
Mhm.
And, DEI is a giant umbrella that is housed in different departments. And my belief is that it's not a separate department that sits somewhere. It's something that is embedded into every part of your business. If you're doing it right, you should have it embedded. So what I do with companies is we look at your data, we kind of figure out what does your demographic look like? What are you hearing from your employees? When was the last time you surveyed? If you haven't, I do focus groups and I do surveys. And then we see what does your company need right now as far as communities, right? So ERG, Employee Resource Group, some people call it councils, some people call it action teams, right? You want to connect your employees and support them in a way that matters to them. You have to understand them first. And then you have to put that in the context of where my organization going. So that is, and the Immigrants in Corporate is sort of like how I support people, like individuals, more direct one-on-one. Yeah.
Fantastic. All right. And I really do think that it's needed to create that culture, especially right now where it seems like everything's becoming so monetized and automated that employees don't matter. And I think that it's a good message that employers can say is, no, you really do matter because we wouldn't be here without you. And we want you to make sure that you feel happy and comfortable. So I think what you're doing is important. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Charisse.
And moms, I hope that you've learned that it's okay if there's chaos and it's okay that you struggle because we're all getting through it. But the most important thing is making sure that you are valuing the time that you have with your kids and your family and that you are doing a good job. So pat yourself on the back, know that you are. And when it comes to business, if you are looking for how to create a better community, then please reach out to Lola and go out and make it a great day. Beautiful moms, remember, you are unbreakable. Keep illuminating the world with your strength, pursuing your dreams, and reveling in the splendor of motherhood. This is Charisse Walker, bidding you farewell for now. Stay tuned for more empowering conversations on the next episode of the Unbreakable Mompreneurs podcast. Until then, keep shining bright. Signing off with love, Charisse Walker.